Okay. All right, so we're going to commence the meeting. So welcome everybody. I'd like to acknowledge the original custodians of the land on which we're meeting, pay respects to their elders past and present, and to any descendants who might be here tonight. I would also like to just remind you all that this meeting is being live streamed, so people in the gallery may also be recorded and available for being viewed. Okay, just trying to find the right bits of paper. So I also would just like to point out that as councillors, we've all taken an oath to carry out the duties of our office in the best interests of the people of Indigo Shire, and to do this in a fair and impartial manner. We're all committed to exercising the council's powers and functions to the best of our skills and judgment. So, are there any apologies? Is there any declaration of a conflict of interest?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I have a direct conflict of interest under Section 77B of the Local Government Act in Section 11.6 of the agenda under the matter of rezoning Twist Creek Road, Yakandanda, and I'll absent myself from the discussion and vote, and I've notified the CEO in writing of my conflict.
All right, thank you, Councillor Shepherd. All right, so to open forum, we have two people submitting tonight. I will ask, the first one was Ed Tyree. And just before you start, I'll just remind people that if you're here to speak to any issues, that this is the only opportunity you have is during open forum. At the moment, you can't speak to items during the meeting, so this is your chance. Ed.
Thank you. Evening all. As usual, the use of water. You no doubt saw the Four Corners programme last night called Pumped. Brings to mind the response of the former General Manager, Galway Murray Water, Gavin Hanlon, to questions raised by the SRCI during a meeting with him. And he answered the same question to Council in relation to the use of water, saying it was not a matter for Galway Murray Water. As I said, I won't go into the details of the Water Act. I'll leave that. But it clearly shows there's a use of water for Galway Murray Water to take into consideration. But given that Indigo Shire, Alpine Shire, Toowong Shire councils are undertaking a project to suggest changes for the better management of bulk water extraction, will Indigo Shire Council ensure there's dialogue with Galway Murray Water to ensure that community involvement is maximised during deliberations on any matter concerning the conservation and management of water resources, and that any misconception that the use of water is a matter of Galway Murray Water is clearly understood. I'd like to add to that just 4 words: in conjunction with Council. So, because it's a Council responsibility too, I think, when it comes to the issue of water licences.
Okay, so Ed, thank you for your question, and the short answer is yes, we will very much be wanting to ensure that community involvement is maximised and that Galway Murray Water meets its obligations in all deliberations around the use of water in Indigo Shire.
Thank you. It's a matter in the record now.
Thank you. And our second questioner is Robin McLeish.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. My question is, will Council revise Local Law 3 to allow questions to be raised in open forum from residents who are not present at the meeting? Some supporting comments. The introduction of live streaming now permits Shire residents to appreciate the conduct of council meetings from their own home. Modern TV programs such as the ABC Q&A now encourage questions from people who are not present in the audience. The Waganya Progress Association asked for this improvement 12 months ago. We acknowledge that it can be dangerous to travel at night to council meetings, especially from outlying towns such as Waganya and Kaganya. It is unfair to expect people to spend an hour travelling to ask a question that will only take 1 or 2 minutes. The current policy is unnecessarily restrictive and denies people who are carers or have limited mobility or do not have access to transport the opportunity to participate in open forum. Community forums or community meetings have ceased. People can no longer use this avenue to seek information directly from their councillors. Some people find it uncomfortable to ask questions in a public forum. Councillors already has an extensive list of items that cannot be raised in questions. Closing time for absentee questions excuse me, could be 5 p.m. on Friday prior to the meeting to allow councillors and staff more time to consider and, if necessary, contact the questioner and resolve the issue. But the question would still be raised at the council meeting and the answer recorded in the meeting minutes. This is an excellent opportunity for Indigo Shire to continue to expand the use of modern communication technology.
Okay, thank you, Robin. So, getting back to your original question, will Council revise Local Law 3 to allow questions to be raised in open forum from residents who are not present at the meeting? We are reviewing Local Law 3. At this stage, it's not until later in the council term, so in the meantime, what I would recommend is that if people want to ask a question and don't, as you rightly say, don't want to travel that distance at night, that if they contact one of the councillors and put their question, the councillor can put that question in open forum and have it raised. At the moment, we don't have the facilities like Q&A for people to live stream in. We're not, we don't have video links and things. However, we certainly are very aware that this opportunity, when we review Local Law 3, will be to look at how do we make ourselves much more accessible. And just to comment on the question you raised around the councillor forums, we were having a discussion about that earlier. We're just at that point now. We've set a meeting time to look at how we roll that out. We're all committed to doing that. While the council plan consultation was going on, we put them aside because we had 9 meetings, as you know, in all the shires around, all the areas around the shire. So we are now looking at exactly what will be the best format for those forums to be, so that more people can attend them than used to, and where and when we will do that. So we've started that discussion. We'll be continuing it. Some councillors are away for a couple of weeks, continuing that in the end of August to hopefully roll things out in September. So they will be reinstated.
Okay. I have tried your recommendation to address that question to a councillor to raise it for me. That has not been successful. And can you give me an indication of the time frame that you expect this issue to be raised or resolved in?
Okay, so the Local Law 3 review is actually in for, I think it's not till later in this term, because we only just did it at the end of the last council. Robin, I'm going to have to say you've had your question.
No, it's just, we're talking about a 4-year council term.
Yeah. So I'm explaining that is when it's scheduled to be done, because there's a lot of resources involved in doing it. It's not something you can do easily. So it is scheduled for later this term, given that it was only just done at the end of the last term. However, if you're finding that the process I've suggested doesn't work, then contact me directly and we'll try and make sure that it does work. I'm happy to ask questions on your behalf, Robin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So, back to the agenda. So, thank you for those questions. Are there any condolences? Confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Price. All those in favour? Carried, thank you. Is there any business arising from the previous minutes? No? Okay, any deputations or petitions? No. Item 10.1, the Council Advisory Committee minutes. So the recommendation is that Council receives and endorses the attached unconfirmed advisory committee minutes and endorses the officer comments. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Price. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Anyone against the motion? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 10.2, an Assembly of Councillor Records. The recommendation is that Council accepts the attached Assembly of Councillor Records. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Trenery, seconder. Councillor Shepherd. Anyone to speak against the motion? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 11.1, election of new members to a new member to the Indigo Shire Community Grants and Awards Advisory Committee. So the recommendation is that Council appoints Ms Josie Cornish to the Indigo Shire Community Grants and Awards Advisory Committee. Do I have someone to move that recommendation? Okay, so Councillor Goldsworthy, seconded. Councillor Murdoch. Anyone against that? All those in favour? Carried.
Can you just ask
Oh, certainly.
Just, with the members, have we had a look to see what the distribution is around the Shire of members on that committee so that we're ensured that everybody's...
Yep.
From my recollection, the geographic distribution of the representatives is fairly even around the Shire. So I'd like to think that we're not centric in one particular area.
Okay, thank you. All right, 11.2, Q Springs Water Extraction Monthly Compliance Report, put forward by Development and Community Services. Are there any questions for the Director, Mark Florence? Okay, so the recommendation is that Council notes the Q Springs Water Extraction Facility Monitoring Report content and the action undertaken where required. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Gaffney, someone to second? Councillor Goldsworthy. Anyone against the motion? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 11.3. Election of new member to the Indigo Community Access Committee. This report's been put forward by the Manager of Community Services and Development. Are there any questions for Mark Florence? Okay, so the recommendation is that the Indigo Community Access Committee Terms of Reference Schedule A 14.1 be amended to read: 4.1, the committee shall comprise of up to 9 members appointed by Council to include 1 Indigo Shire councillor, non-voting, and 8 community representatives voting. That Council appoints both Josie Cornish and Rachel Ferguson to the Indigo Community Access Committee. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Price. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Does there anyone want to speak to the motion?
I just think it's fitting that we received 2 nominations for this committee, and so, as you can see, the terms of reference have been changed to accept both of those nominations. Given that it is the Access Committee, I think that's appropriate to accept both, and they both bring good skills to the committee.
Okay, does someone want to just explain what the Access Committee is for the people in the gallery who might not want? Would you like to do that, Councillor Trenery?
I've been lucky enough to be on the Access Committee for about 5 years now, and basically it goes through all areas of access, so it's not just about disability, ramps, that sort of thing. It's also about maybe mothers wanting a change room, that sort of access, or even I think they recommended change rooms for males to as well, not just in female toilets, that sort of thing. So, but they also get heavily involved in design and coming up with information that will be helpful with council buildings, coming from a perspective of people that are in wheelchairs or people that might have some difficulties. I think it's great value to Indigo Shire as a whole, and it's well represented right across and right across all organisations as well.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Price, did you want to add something? Yeah, you can sum up.
I think that all of what Councillor Trenery said is correct, and I think it's a really important committee for us to have, particularly in our shire where we have to balance heritage and access. So I think the committee does a really good job of that, given that we are a heritage shire, so there are limitations on that.
Okay, so is there anyone that wishes to speak to the motion? Anyone against the motion? I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. And I'll just say it is great to see that we've got more people than positions for this committee, and that we've altered the terms of reference to allow for that, and also to thank the committee for the work that they do, because it has a big impact on the decisions of council. 11.4, Martins Lane redevelopment. This is put forward by the Department of Development and Community Services. Are there any questions for the Director, Mark Florence? All right, so I'm going to put the recommendation that council endorses the Concept 2 designs for the development of Martins Lane and proceed to detailed design and construction. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Murdoch. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Price. Is there anyone against the motion? Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Murdoch?
Well, yes, this is part of the placemaking. This is part of the placemaking development in Chiltern, and this is going to be really one of the first cabs off the rank, I think. And it's about time. I used to own the supermarket right next to Martins Lane, and it was a dusty old road, and really nobody used it for anything but maybe parking down the back occasionally. This time I think people are really going to use it because the designs are really good. We've had a lot of consultation about the designs, and even though there is a preferred one, there are still bits and pieces in there that people would like to see included from the second design. So I think I'm looking forward to seeing how it turns out, and I'm quite sure our community is as well. We had a really good community meeting there. Councillor Price and I were both at the consultation meeting, one of the consultation meetings there, and people were excited. Even the children were putting their marks on the board about which one they wanted. So I'm really thrilled about this. I think it'll be fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Price, would you like to speak to the motion?
I think that it's a really good opportunity for Chiltern in that it's the nearest that the town can get to a town square. And I'm really pleased with the designs and the feedback that the community's given about the designs. And it's a really important process, and it's good to see that we've also included within that, after just speaking about the Access Committee, an accessible table on the north side and seats with arms and backs to cater for elderly people as well, as long as consulting with cyclists who are great users of that space to see what the appropriate bike rack would be for them. So it just shows how wide the consultation's been, not just within the community, but who the targeted user groups will be in that space.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak to this motion? Anyone against? Okay, so I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Carried. And again, I would like to thank the community for their input, and it's been quite an extensive process. The Chiltern placemaking process has been a really successful model, and I think we'd like to see that in other communities around the Shire, and I'd like to thank the staff for the amount of work that they put into developing this, and it's great to see it finally getting underway. 11.5, Planning Permit Application PP 170075, use of the land for group accommodation. This has been put forward by the Department of Development and Community Services planners. Are there any questions for Mark Florence, the Director? Okay, so I'm going to put the recommendation that Council approves Planning Permit PP 170075 to allow the use of the land for group accommodation on land known as 17 Miller Lane, Staghorn Flat, subject to the conditions as read, and issue a notice of decision to grant a permit. There are a very long list of conditions here. I'm not going to read them all out, but they're very extensive. So would somebody like to put the motion? Councillor Shepherd. Anyone to second? Councillor Gaffney. Anyone against the motion? Councillor Shepherd, would you like to speak to this motion?
Look, I'm aware that there are a number of concerns that have been raised by the neighbours of increased dust, capacity of the road, security issues, amenity and subdivision concerns, but when we have a good look at what we've been presented and speaking to the planning department, the applicants run a biodynamic farm and are interested in a small farm stay facility with a maximum of 8 guests at any one time. And I think most of the all of the concerns have been covered in the agenda by the planning department. So I feel quite confident that we can support this. I can't see there's going to be any concern, but if there is, of course, this is just the beginning, and there'll be an opportunity for people to appeal to this decision. So, yes, I'd like to support this motion.
All right, thank you. Councillor Gaffney?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Council is spending $6 million on a rail trail between Beechworth and Yakandanda. It should become a tourist mecca, and they'll certainly need accommodation. This facility is able to accommodate 8 guests, and even more with the approval of council. It should be a winner for the Shire.
All right, is there anyone else that would like to speak to the motion? Anyone against? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. 11.6. I'll just remind Councillor Shepherd, you declared a conflict of interest. So, did you say it again? It's fine. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. All right, so the item is the rezoning of Twist Creek Road, Yakandanda. It's been put forward by the Development and Community Services Department. Are there any questions for the Director, Mark Florence, before I put the motion? All right, so the recommendation is that Council seeks authorisation from the Minister for Planning to prepare and exhibit a planning scheme amendment to rezone land on Twist Creek Road, Yakandanda, from the general residential zone to the rural living zone. Do I have someone to put that? Councillor Murdoch. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Goldsworthy. Is there anyone that wishes to speak against the motion? Councillor Murdoch, do you wish to put the motion?
I've been on council for about 11 years now, and I think this came up when I was first on council. And at that stage, I think they wanted something like 300 small blocks. I'm not quite sure the exact number. And I think most people in Yakandanda were pretty horrified, because that's a huge, big addition to the town. This recommendation, I think, is much more suitable for the town. It means that it's a chance for this area to be developed, and Yakandanda is going ahead and will need extra areas for development and land use. So I'm quite happy to see this one come up and be put out for people to have a look at and see how it goes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsworthy. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Trenery.
I'd just like to point out it and thank the planning department for working with the town and the developer and coming up with a common sense result, really. They've put a lot of, as Councillor Murdoch said, this has been an ongoing development for well before I was on council, and I think this is a smart result, and so congratulations to all involved.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. And you can, get Councillor Shepherd. Thank you very much. Oh, you can leave her out there, but bring her in. Right. So item 12.1, Woolshed Road. This has been put forward by the Department of Infrastructure. Are there any questions for the Director, Ian Ellett? Councillor Goldsworthy.
So on page 39 of the report, it talks at the bottom of the page, it talks about the priority and the benefit score. This particular road was given a score of 6 out of possibility of 12. There's 4 criteria on which this road's been judged. I'm just wondering if you could tell me what score on each criteria for the road and how it was actually arrived at.
Yeah, sure. So as outlined on page 40, each of the criteria, there's a few words there describing how the scoring system works. So this one was rated against the traffic criteria, having a traffic count on the gravel section between 50 and 100 vehicles a day. It got a score of 2. From a maintenance rating, it also got a score of 2, so a moderate maintenance road, doesn't have excessive slopes and gradients that cause extreme difficulty. From a strategic sense, it scored a 1, and that's a reflection that has, little industry or, very low truck movements and those sort of things, and that's been confirmed in the recent traffic count. And against the community criteria, it also scored 1. So 2 2s and 2 1s was how the 6 was scored, and the community reflecting that most of the traffic there, our count, a couple of k's along the road as outlined in the report, was 59 vehicles a day, and a fair percentage of those would be accounted for by the residents that live there. So that's the scoring system.
I'd be happy to move that motion.
All right, so you'll put the motion. So the motion is, I'll read what it is first, that council notes the information contained in the report in relation to the general condition of Woolshed Road, that the sealing of Woolshed Road is not a current priority, but that all roads will be reassessed as part of the review of capital works prioritisation in the coming months, and that minor improvement works to the gravel formation have recently commenced, and that Woolshed Road will continue to be maintained to provide a safe and trafficable road as an important part of Council's road network. So you're moving that, Councillor Goldsworthy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Anyone against the motion? You'd like to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that the work that the council's done to actually get this report together. It was a result of a resolution of council some 3 months ago, and that came about because of community concern over the road itself and the condition it was in. Subsequent to that, there has been some roadworks conducted on there, and it is a better road for it. I hope that this provides some clarity for the community that live down Woolshed, and hopefully going forward we can get some more sustained criteria around our road management that is more suitable. Thank you.
Councillor Murdoch, do you wish to speak as a seconder? Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Anyone wish to speak against the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thanks. Item 12.2, the proposed use of former maternal and child health building in Beechworth. The report's been put forward through the Department of Infrastructure Services. Are there any questions for the Director, Ian Ellett? Right, so I'll put the recommendation that Council offers a 2-year lease to Indigo FM for the use of the former Beechworth Maternal and Child Health Building, with an option for a 1-year extension and a rental amount of $1 per year. Notes that the building is on Crown land and that the lease will require Crown consent. Develops a memorandum of understanding between Council, Indigo FM, Beechworth Urban Land Care and Sustainability and Beechworth Women's Shed to facilitate joint occupancy arrangements between the 3 groups and to help maximise the community benefit that can be derived from the facility. And lastly, authorises the Chief Executive Officer to execute the lease documents. Do I have someone to put that to move that motion? Councillor Gaffney, do I have a seconder? Councillor Shepherd. She was just ahead of you. Oh, okay. Councillor Trenery, would you like to be the seconder? Okay, all good. Is there anyone that would like, anyone against the motion? Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Gaffney?
I'd just like to say, Madam Mayor, that the process has been very open and transparent, and I think the people who will occupy the building are very deserving, community-minded, and I'm sure it'll be very successful.
Councillor Trenery, would you like to speak as a seconder?
Just to endorse Councillor Gaffney's comments, it is important that these buildings go to good community organisations, and I think that's taken place, which is fantastic.
Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Goldsworthy.
Just to make the point that the building is probably in the last few years of its use without spending considerable more money on it. So whilst we're agreeing to lease the buildings out for this period, I think we need to make it clear that it may not be forever and a day.
Just to sum up, Madam Mayor?
Yep.
I think it's good to see the leading commentator and DJ is in the gallery, Daniel Goonan. And he's
Scott?
he's there with Scott, his boss.
All right, so anyone else wish to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. And congratulations. It's great to see all of these groups who have been really active in trying to find spaces. It's great to see you all working together and coming up with such a good use for that building for as long as it's able to be used that way. So thank you. 12.3, the Municipal Emergency Management Plan. This has been put forward by the Department of Infrastructure Services. Do we have any questions for the Director, Ian Ellett? Okay, so I'm going to put the recommendation that Council endorses the Municipal Emergency Management Plan version 2.1 July 2017, which is attached to this report. Do I have someone to move that? Councillor Goldsworthy, do I have a seconder? Councillor Murdoch. Is there anyone against the motion? Would you like to speak to it?
Just briefly, Mayor, thank you. The MEMF identifies plans and procedures for the prevention, preparedness, response and recovery of major risks throughout the municipality. These include flood, fire, pandemic, storm, heat wave and exotic animal disease. Council works with relevant emergency response agencies to manage and mitigate these risks to provide a safe community for our residents. This is lifted directly out of the report, and I think it's something to bear in mind when we're looking at this. There's been a lot of work going into this over the years. This is a redraft, and I think it bodes well for the future of the Shire when it comes to emergency management.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch.
I'd just like to congratulate those people that have put a lot of work into this. If you look at the plan, it is a very extensive plan, and having been through bushfires and you know, not knowing what was happening, now we realise that these sort of plans are absolutely incredibly useful, because whilst most of the local people and that don't really realise that, you know, what the organisation is, but the organisation from this plan in an emergency is pretty much flawless, or they try to be flawless. So, you know, with this sort of work put in, I feel that we are well prepared for any emergencies that we have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Anyone else wish to speak to this? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. And yes, let's hope that we don't need to use it very often, but at such times as happens, it's really good to know that there's been such a lot of work done at such a deep level to get this right, and to work with all of the emergency services together. So thank you for the work that's been done there. 12.4, contract 17/4105, cleaning of council buildings, public toilets and amenities. This has been prepared through the Department of Infrastructure Services. So are there any questions for Ian Ellett? Okay, so the recommendation is that Council accepts the tender from Bogdan Investments Proprietary Limited for contract 17/4105, cleaning of Shire offices, buildings, public toilets and amenities for 3 years with an optional extension of 2 years. It notes the total value of the contract of approximately $530,000 over the initial 3-year term, and in excess of $900,000 if extended to 5 years. This authorises the Chief Executive Officer to sign and seal the contract documents. Do I have someone to move that motion? Councillor Goldsworthy. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Trenery? Do you want to reverse it again? You both get to speak. Is there anyone against the motion? All right, Councillor Trenery, even though you're the seconder, do you want to say anything about it? Councillor Goldsworthy, do you want to speak to the motion?
It's often said that council's about roads, rates and rubbish. This is an important part of our own rubbish. So I think it's very important that we do clean up after ourselves.
Thank you. Councillor Trenery, do you want to say anything?
Obviously, it's quite a large contract, and we've gone over the method and in the way this has been awarded, and I'm certainly very happy with the way the process has gone to award this. It's really a huge amount of money that ratepayers will be looking at this saying, what's it being spent on and so on, but it's the process that it's gone through has been a very good process and a very thorough process. So I'm very happy to second this motion.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Gaffney.
I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Treasury said. It's a dirty job, but
Thank you for your contribution, councillor. Anybody else wish to speak to the motion? All right, so I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hands. Anyone against? No, thank you. Carried. What will we do without you? All right. So we've got no reports from executive management. There are no notices of motion in this meeting. We're up to item 15, which is the councillors' report. Are there any councillors that would like to just give a very brief, up to 2 minutes update of things that have been happening around the Shire that they're involved in? Councillor Price.
There were a few councillors that attended the announcement of the Chiltern Childcare, and it was really good to see there was quite a few people there. There was the representatives from the Committee of Management, the SES building, which is nearby, and lots of other interested parties within the community, and there were lots of questions about when the enrolments would be taken again. So just to reiterate that they'll be from 2018, will be when the facility would be opening, and it's really exciting to hear that there's lots of discussions going on around about the after-school care as a result of that as well. So very exciting for mothers and families living and working in areas around Chiltern.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors? Okay, I'm going to take the opportunity just to give people a brief update about Murray Goulburn. As you would all be aware, the closure of the factory was announced in Kiwa Tangambalanga some months ago now. The first round of job losses will be this Friday. We've been working with the Working Party, which we actually convene the Working Party, which includes workers, community members, a representative from Murray Goulburn, and RDV, the state government's there. And so we've been working with that group to look at the process, and we're at the point now where we are putting in a formal request to Murray Goulburn that they support our bid to buy the North East Catchment Management Authority site when it comes for sale in Kiwa, that we're asking them for $250,000 to support the community given the impact of the closure of this plant on those towns. We also have employed we haven't, Regional Development Victoria has seconded a worker to both Campaspe Shire and Indigo Shire to support the community through this process, and that person will be should be located in Yakandanda at our office there and working with the community to help them through this process. So we're very grateful to Regional Development Victoria for that secondment. So we're doing what we can to support the community. Clearly, it's a terrible time for them. Our thoughts are with that community at the moment, and we're continuing to do all that we can to ensure that we get the best outcomes possible for the people of Kiwa Tangambalanga. And the other thing I will mention is that on Thursday we have a ministerial visit from the state government. They are coming to Yakandanda. At this stage, we'll be announcing who is coming later on, I think just before that visit. At the moment, we'll be meeting with the ministerial party in Yakandanda to talk further about the cycling optimisation project and the grant that has been given for that. So that's good news for us. So that's all from me. Are there any other councillors' reports at this stage? Okay, my diary is there in the agenda for just for information. Has anyone got any questions about that? No. Is there any general business? Yes, Councillor Gaffney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Council has raised with the CEO and Mayor about community forums, which was raised during open forum. I'm very pleased to say that it's certainly on councillors' radar, and the forum that it takes might be different, but we really need to get out to the sort of villages. I think it takes an hour and 3/4 to drive from the east to the west of this shire, and on these cold, wet nights with kangaroos, I think it's very important that council gets around.
Thank you, councillor. Absolutely. Any other comments or issues? Okay, so I think this is the quickest council meeting in my time on Indigo Shire, but I'm declaring the meeting closed. Thank you very much.
Please note the time, Madam Mayor.
We had bets on. So, Councillor Gaffney, you win the chocolate.